As we near the completion of this course, I wanted to talk for a moment about how you might go about practicing yoga off the yoga mat. Now, if you have a regular yoga practice or a regular asana practice, there's probably a level of accountability or consistency that can come up purely from just going into classes. There's probably a certain schedule or a certain rhythm to where an asana practice or a physical practice, perhaps even a meditation practice, can become something that's embedded into day-to-day life. Now, with the tools that we've talked about in this course and the philosophy and wisdom from this course, a practice of living yoga off the mat is one that you will have to undertake on your own. It's one that will require a certain level of discipline and a certain level of ongoing practice in order to practice yoga off the mat and integrate these tools. So I wanted to leave you with a couple of models from yoga philosophy and a couple of tips. So one of the models that I wanted to share here is actually from the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Now, in chapter 2 or pada 2, where Patanjali is describing sadhana or practice, a really simple model that Patanjali lays out in this chapter of how to practice yoga is something called Kriya Yoga. He lays this out in chapter 2 prior to the 8 limbs, sort of as a really simplistic method of practice in case the 8 limbs might seem a little bit too complex. So Kriya Yoga is really simple and really powerful. So it's a simple 3-part model that begins with Svadhyaya, that self-study. The self-study is followed by tapas, that discipline, stoking the inner fire, performing some kind of action, and then followed by Isvara Pranadhana, that surrender to that which is out of control. So this process can repeat over and over again, and it's one that you can begin in this moment today. And then as the process completes, you can start it all over again. So this is a really simple model that can be used on a physical level with asana, perhaps noticing a certain area of the body to work with, but also one that can come up in a lot of the philosophical principles, such as working with yamas or niyamas, or working with karma and dharma. So lastly, I wanted to share something that Patanjali shares in the first chapter, the Samadhi chapter of the Yoga Sutras. So in this chapter, in addition to defining yoga, enlightenment, defining meditation, and the purpose of yoga, as well as the obstacles to achieving yoga, Patanjali shares the importance of practice called abhyasa. Abhyasa means consistent, steady practice. And that goes alongside non-attachment, called vairagya. So this is a concept that's echoed through different chapters of yoga history, whether it's tapas relating to Isvara Pranadhana, or karma and then surrendering to the results, or non-attachment to the results. In any case, what Patanjali is saying here is that it is through this consistent and steady practice that isn't always easy that we can start to make progress. And as this lives alongside vairagya, Patanjali is saying that, we may not get there. We may not find ourselves perfect in this lifetime, but any step along this path is a step worth taking. So my recommendation to you for practicing yoga off the yoga mat is to create some sort of structure that works for you, some sort of regular interval that you can stick to hopefully follow this practice of Kriya Yoga, a practice of self-study, tapas, and Isvara Pranadhana. In this course, I've provided you with some worksheets, some workbooks, and self-reflection questions, which I think are a wonderful basis for something that you can start to integrate, whether that's a couple weeks from now, a couple months from now, or perhaps even just once a year. In any case, it's this consistent, steady practice, abhyasa, that will allow us to start to integrate these principles to where it becomes second nature, to where it's embedded in the way that we behave and informs each decision that we make day to day and moment to moment.